Ready, Dylan? Great. Hi. Ooh. How are you? Come on in. How's it going? I'm Emily Barnum. I'm one of the guidance counselors. Hi. This is so fun. There are a lot of people here today. Our presentation is short, meaning that there's not a lot of slides, but it is very dense. So we apologize in advance, but you'll get to hear us talk a lot. We'll try to make it fun. Like I said, I'm Emily Barnum. I'm one of the guidance counselors. This is the fantastic Mrs. Mazzola. Miss Sturma, who has students with last names A through G, is on the totally opposite side of the educational system right now. So she's at her first son's kindergarten back to school night, so she really didn't want to miss that. So she's there tonight, so she's not going to be joining us. So it's myself, Emily Barnum, and I have students' last names H through M.
And I have N through Z. I'm sure you guys know this because this is it. We're here for seniors. So we've had you hopefully all 4 years, unless there's some newbies in the house, which we do have some new seniors this year. So if you're the first time, then welcome.
Nice to see you all. Just by a show of hands, how many of you are here to hear a little bit more about the nitty-gritty of the college application process? Great, so most of you. I will say that it tends to be, just because of the nature of our population, tends to be sort of heavy in the college admissions process. However, having said that, we are meeting with all of the seniors. We require the students to meet with their counselor to develop a plan, no matter what that plan is. And sometimes that plan evolves over the course of the year. So we ask students to meet with us at some point before we go away for the winter break. Most students are meeting with us before December in any case, but before the winter break is kind of like our deadline for seniors, so we know what their plan is. So having said all that, like I said, our conversations tonight tend to be sort of application heavy, and in reflecting on what's the best way to give you information, we kind of thought about what are the things you really need to know. So we will save you some of the gory details of the student responsibilities, which they have already largely taken care of with us in boot camps and already in private meetings. So we're doing something a little bit different this year. Instead of having a senior assembly where we meet with all of the students in here, as a follow-up to our last junior meeting, we decided to do something a little bit different where we're meeting with students in smaller groups, but we're doing a little bit more hand-holding, but it gives us an opportunity to really help them and give them instant feedback on their application. So going through the Common App with them, registering for a Common App account if they don't already have them, matching their accounts, their Common App account and their Naviance account. I can see some of your eyes glazing over, so it's like I'm speaking a foreign language, which is totally fine. We'll get into that in a second, but my point is that we've really been able to do a lot with the students one-on-one. So we've actually met with almost half the class at this point. So we've had all of the periods 1 through 7 for 2 days, so any senior that's had a study period has been able to come. And we realize that not every student has a study period, and lots of students have after-school responsibilities as well. So we were able to catch some of the students after school and already some of the students in private meetings to do those same types of activities with them one-on-one if they weren't able to do the boot camp. But we will now, we just decided today to offer an evening boot camp. So instead of us being here for curriculum night doing just sort of check-ins with parents, we'll actually have a more structured, focused time next week where we'll take the 2 hours for 6 to 8 to meet with seniors if they want to come in during that time frame. And certainly as parents, if you were here and you needed to grab our ear, that would be a perfectly appropriate time to visit us as well. So if you haven't had a chance to see us or meet us, we'd be more than willing to meet with you during that time briefly, and we will have that opportunity for the students as well. So there's enough opportunities in groups, and then, as I said, students are required to meet with us one-on-one in any case, so we can, if you're feeling like your student just can't make any of those times, we just wanted to let you know that just don't worry about it. We're here to reassure you that we will meet with your children and we will come up with a plan no matter what that looks like. And if they need a little bit more hand-holding, then that's what we're here for, so no problem. So that's kind of like the high level of the kinds of things we've been accomplishing so far. Is everyone getting my emails? Has anyone not received any emails from me recently? Again, Emily Barnum, great. So if you haven't, or if you're not getting regular communication from me, please come down before you leave tonight and update us with an email, because it could be that we don't have a current email address for you. Okay, this is boot camp today, packed house, very engaged students. So I'm gonna start by talking a little bit about the application process. I think when we talk about applications and Common App and Naviance, I'm just gonna back up really quick and talk about vocabulary. So Naviance Family Connection is our, if you think about it, our post-secondary plan manager. It's our online electronic place where the students go and can develop a resume. They fill out the counselor questionnaire, which is a little bit of a survey that helps the counselors get to know the students a little bit better on a personal level. It's an opportunity for them to fill out the teacher questionnaire. They request transcripts through Naviance. They request teacher recommendations through Naviance. They can explore colleges. They can explore careers. They can take personality type indicators. So it's kind of like a post-secondary plan manager. And so all applications will live in there. All colleges that they think they're going to apply to are going to live in Naviance. Those include all institutional applications, like for example, Endicott is not on the Common App. So if your child is applying to Endicott, Endicott will show up in Naviance. And then we think about Common App. Common App is just that. It's the Common Application Manager. So it will show you when the students log in, not you as parents, the students have a login, and it's going to show you the dashboard of a list of schools and kind of where they are in the process and what they need to complete. So that's the Common App Application Manager. 1 second, I just need a little bit of water here. I've been talking a lot today, and I have a sick baby at home, so I'm sort of like running around with my head cut off a little bit today, so you have to bear with me. So that's sort of Naviance versus Common App when we're talking about the two different things. When I talk about matching, the students have spent some time with us registering for this Common App account because there are a lot of member institutions as part of the Common Application, and for the most part, students are going to have at least probably one Common App school on their list. Some may not, and that's totally fine, but we're kind of starting with this process. So we've registered for Common App, we've matched their account with Naviance, and so they've signed an agreement, they've signed a waiver that says, yes, I'm allowing my school to send my transcript records, and I either do or I don't waive my right to see my recommendation information. Again, not a lot that you really need to worry about, but everything's going to be accomplished by the time your students are going to be submitting applications. So now their Common App and their Naviance can speak together, which again then allows the counselors to send the transcripts and the teachers to send recommendation information. So just to give you a little bit of background, those are kind of some of those things that we're coming up against with the students in the boot camp in our one-on-one sessions. We don't need to spend a ton of time on all of these elements. I just want to mention them to you because they've come up a lot in the boot camp and in our private conversations, and it could be that it comes up with you at home. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes, if you don't mind, kind of going through some of these things. In the Common Application, there are a number of different tabs. One is Profile. It asks for some biographical information about the students, and you would find that too in the institutional application. So some biographical information, and then there's an education section where the students list Swampscott High School, the address, and then there's an opportunity for them to say, what are the exact classes that I'm taking? And the Common App asks you to be pretty precise. So one of the things it's asking about is what level the classes are. And the students sometimes get tripped up on that and what kind of language to use. And we are recommending the students to look at exactly how their schedule is written and match and write that in the Common App exactly how it's written in their schedule. So they're physically going to type in the different fields what the names of their classes are, and they should pick, for example, advanced if they have ACP on their schedule. So that's just one of those things that they're getting tripped up on. But that's actually important language. It's an important distinction. When a college admissions committee is flipping through and doing their first quick 20-minute read on an applicant, that's important. That language to show the advanced college prep is actually significant language. So that's just something that we point out. And then again, the honors section is a follow-up in the education section. So things that might live in the honors section might be academic excellence in geometry, or I earned a qualifying score on the national Spanish exam, or I've earned honor roll status for 3 years in a row, or I'm a part of National Honor Society. Those are the type of honors that they're looking for. Students sometimes think, am I supposed to list my honors classes here? But what they're asking for is those sort of honors distinctions there. Also, I should say, stop me at any time if you have questions or if I'm going too fast or, again, if I'm speaking a different language. Self-report on Common App, so that is referring to the test scores. So there is an opportunity for students to self-report their scores. There are schools that are test optional, so it could be that students have no intention at all of reporting their scores, but for the most part, students will submit a standardized test score. So as part of the application, one of the other big pieces you'll remember of the quantitative analysis, in addition to the GPA and rank, is the set of standardized test scores. So a lot of students will submit the standardized test scores, and in addition to getting that official copy from the organization itself to verify the student's information, they have an opportunity to self-report. And we're recommending that, although the students don't have to, and it can be optional in some cases for schools, that they really do go ahead and self-report if they're sending those scores anyway. Again, kind of goes back to that. You want to give the admissions committee the information that they need on that quick 15, 20-minute read on the application the first time around. So if they're looking for information, it's our opportunity to make sure we're giving them the information that they're really looking for.
Can I just say something about that?
Sure.
And it's also important, a lot of the stuff that we're saying really goes back to making sure that you, and more importantly, the students are doing the research for each individual school, because some schools now are requiring all you have to do is self-report and not even officially send in the test scores from College Board, that they'll just accept them from the self-report on Common App. And if you are admitted to the school, then that's when they will tell you to send in the scores from College Board. So it might save you money, because it does cost money when you have to send them from College Board. So it could save you money, and save you time depending on your testing schedule, so forth and so on. So it's really about doing all of the legwork and the research ahead of time and making sure you understand what each school's rules are in regards to reporting, so forth and so on.
Great.
So sometimes it does show up on Common App, but your best bet to figuring out what each school's rules are in regards to reporting SAT or any standardized testing is to go to their website and find out that way. Deadlines, SAT reporting, requirements, all of that stuff, your best bet is to not count on Naviance, not to count on Common App, is to count on their website.
Any other questions on the self-report? Yeah. So I think the way that it's, so the question is, do they self-report their combined super score? I think the way that it's set up is they have to do it by test sitting.
Yes.
And so the question about super score, and what that is that if let's say, for example, you take you take the SAT 2 different times. A super score is when the college makes their own composite score out of your highest scores of both settings. And they're not penalizing the student for whatever a lower score is. There's not like a deduction of points somewhere along the way. They really are trying to give students their best opportunity at the highest score. So that's what the super scoring is about. Does that answer your question? Any other questions? The activity section is another very crucial section of the Common Application. There are 10 fields, so 10 opportunities for the student to convey what activities they've been participating in that have been really important to them. So you don't have to fill out all 10 fields, and some students find they're struggling to come up with 10, and some students find they wish there was more space. But we're kind of advising, again, to kind of think about what are the most important things about me, again, when that admissions committee is doing the first quick read, that need to come across in my application. So if you're thinking about long-term commitment and dedication to XYZ, whether that's athletics or drama or a volunteer organization or whatever it is that you've been doing after school. I had a student yesterday who's been taking care of his siblings for the past 6 years, and that's been his primary responsibility, so hasn't been able to participate in a lot of extracurricular activities. So that would be something that actually lives in the Common App. In the Common App activities section. So those could be any number of things. Something to think about too as we kind of are going, as I'm sitting with students, we're all kind of realizing 2 things. One is spelling, capitalization, and format, and really thinking about language. The language should be as punchy and active and appropriate on the Common App as it might be for a professional resume. So sitting with your students on that portion of the application can actually be really helpful. And unless your cursor is hovered in the actual field of the activities when you're typing, it won't populate like the red squiggle for a spelling mistake. So that's something, again, to just kind of pay attention to. So if they tell you that they're all done, they're all set, they've checked everything, just sit one more time with them, and without criticizing content necessarily, that you're really kind of going through and checking those finer details of the application. So that's the activity section. In addition to that, students are able to, and we're asking them to develop a resume in any case for the teacher recommendation and the counselor evaluation, but most students at this point have, an activity sheet or a brag sheet or some sort of resume that they've developed some point along the way that they can then either use to help them fill out the activity section, but they can also use it in conjunction with this part of the Common App and upload it as part of the application. So the resume will also kind of be in addition to this section. And just a note about additional information, bless you, there is a section of the Common App called Additional Information. So this is, again, an opportunity for students to talk about something, whether it's an event, in your family, whether it's a death or something, a trip, some piece of your life and your identity that just really can't live anywhere else besides additional information. So isn't necessarily like, activities or a resume, and isn't necessarily something that you want to like portray in your essay, but it really is something important to you that you want to get across in the application. And that's something that you could use the additional information section as an opportunity to get across. So that's another piece, and that's something certainly that the students and you are more than welcome to go over with your counselor. So that's kind of the overall, those are some overall crucial elements of the Common Application pieces that we're kind of coming up against with the students. And just another note about institutional application. So when I say institutional application, what I mean is a school that's not a member institution for Common Application itself has their own institutional application, so like an Endicott, for example. So in that case, if you know your child is applying to Endicott, I'll just go with Endicott, you're gonna go to their website, they go to the admissions page, they click on Apply Now, and it's starting that whole process over and over again. Like I said, the majority of schools are on Common App. The majority of schools that our students apply to are on Common App, but the UC schools, for example, are not on Common App. USC is not on Common App. Endicott is not on Common App. So it ends up being, the implication is like more work on the student and one more kind of thing to manage. But so that's kind of the overall sense of the applications. Now, something that I would say a very popular FAQ is, do I need to, if I want to send my SAT scores, but I don't really know where I'm applying, should I just send my SAT scores everywhere? Should I wait till I'm applying? Or, I'm done with my application, when do I send my transcript? So that's a popular question. Things that are coming up a lot right now, we have students who are applying early action, early decision, and I'll talk about that in a sec, or Ms. Mazzola will. It's hard to tell when it was going to come up. Here it is. When a school receives a piece of information, whether that's an official SAT score or the Common App has been submitted or the counselor sends the school profile, transcript, and counselor evaluation, they begin a file on your child. So all those pieces can come at different times. That's perfectly appropriate and reasonable and acceptable. So if the student is ready to push the button, they don't need to wait for anybody else. They can just push submit and go, as long as they've done their portion of the application. The deadlines are deadlines for the student. So when I talk about early action, does everyone remember what early action is, or shall I review?
Come on, junior seminars, what does early action mean? Come on.
Great.
Good job. Who said that? Good job.
So early action and early decision are the early application. They're just referring to deadlines. So regular decision is, I don't know if it's more popular anymore. I would say it's about half and half. So regular decision deadline tends to hover around January 1. The early applications are generally due around 11/1, although some schools are as early as October 15th, but we kind of use 11/1 as our early day. So that means all of those materials that we just talked about, all of the things that the students are already working on, have to be postmarked, as they used to say, but they have to be submitted by 11/1 at 11:59. So on whatever deadline is at 11:59. So students have up until that time, as do the teachers, as do the counselors. We rarely wait till 11/1. We're usually done before then. However, it is, again, perfectly reasonable, appropriate, and acceptable for those deadlines to be met. That's completely fine. College admissions committees aren't opening and doing reads any time before then anyway, so it doesn't matter if it's received, September 28th or October 31st. It really doesn't matter. So we tell that to the students too, because I think they begin to get very nervous as it's approaching the deadline and they see pending in all the office status. So we assure you, nothing will be late. That is a popular question. So whenever students are ready, they can send any piece of their application, whether that's the official SAT or ACT scores or their common application, and sometimes, again, the counselor evaluation and transcript, and all that information might be sent prior to the students actually applying if we know that they're applying somewhere. That's a great question. So the question is, how much time do you need to give the College Board? So I'll talk about deadlines a little bit. We've outlined this in the college application checklist. We ask the students to request transcripts and give us at least 3 weeks. Now, the 3-week lead time is not for the actual transcript itself, because as you might imagine, it's a piece of paper and it's quite easy to transmit. What takes a lot of time is the counselor evaluation, the accompanying forms that we're kind of putting together. The counselor evaluation is something that we really spend a lot of time on. I would say like minimum 45 minutes an hour per student. So if you imagine that each of us has a minimum of 50 students, that's 50 hours per counselor that we have to squeeze into like a 3-week time frame minimally, where we have other responsibilities during the day and we're only here for 7 hours. So we ask for a 3-week lead time leading up to a deadline. So for students who are applying early action around 11/1, their deadline's early October. For the SATs, for the official scores to be received by the schools, we say like at least now 3 to 4 weeks. It's been faster in the last couple years. They used to say 6 to 7 week lead time. So I would say you do the research on your own, but I would say don't cut it any more than 3 weeks. I think that would be imprudent. And something else that comes up is, okay, well, I'm taking the SATs early October. I'm planning on applying 11/1. Is that too late? Will they get there? And I guess the answer to that question, which is often the case in college admissions, is it really depends. It depends on the school. It depends on the program you're applying to. It depends on a possible major, depending on what they require. So that it really depends. So it behooves the student and the family to do the research on those deadlines. By and large, many schools will accept what they call supplemental materials, like an SAT score or an ACT score, after the fact, but I'd hate to promise that to you for every school and then have you find out otherwise. So that's something you definitely need to research. Yes?
Do students request those transcripts through Naviance, and then will those transcripts then be available in the Common App for those schools to access? So once they do it, once they request it, do they have further responsibility to do something with those transcripts?
That's a great question. So the question is, I don't know if everyone heard you. The question is, once the students request a transcript, and is it in Naviance? The answer is yes. The students request a transcript in Naviance, and we're not going to bore you with the how to do that, because we're just doing it with the students, and at this point, they've either all accomplished that or know how to do it through the boot camp, or we'll sit with them and do it, so we don't need to worry about that for you guys. They will request it on Naviance. Once that's done, we just do it. So we have a transcript manager, and something that is another piece that's kind of come up along the way is when the students have the list of schools in their dashboard in Naviance that they're applying to, it has to reflect the accurate application type. And by that, it means in Naviance, early action, early decision, regular decision, because if they submit the transcripts and they're all regular decision listed in Naviance, but in their mind, they're thinking, I'm applying to early action to the majority of my schools, it shows up on our end as regular decision. And again, so when we're going back to that idea of time management for counselors, if we see a list of schools and they're all RD, we're not necessarily planning to prioritize that student to have all their application materials completed by 11/1, if that makes sense. So they don't have any other further responsibilities besides the transcript request. They just need to make sure all the information is accurate. All schools will get I'll get to you in 2 seconds. All schools will get what they call an initial transcript, no matter when that is that the students apply. The initial transcript for any student that's applying for the 11/1 is freshman, sophomore, junior year grades, their GPA as it stands at the end of the junior year, and their weighted rank as it stands at the end of junior year. Our quarter 1 grades are not yet available. And that's either advantageous or disadvantageous, depending on how you look at it and depending on who you are. The early action schools, students will have an opportunity to send what they call an optional transcript. So 11/1 is the deadline. Our quarter 1 grades, without me promising you anything, in the past couple years tend to hover around somewhere between November 10th and November 15th. And that really, it depends on a lot of factors. It depends on when that process is completed, has to be completed when every student's grades have been submitted by all the teachers. So Susie Smith's grades might all be complete, but one teacher might still be finalizing a grade in English for one of her peers. So everything has to be completed because then we recalculate all the GPAs and all the ranks, and all that has to be accurate before we send it out. So I say that, I give that window on purpose, so I'm not misleading you. Once that's done, we can then send an optional transcript. Students will then need to request an optional transcript from us. It's not automatic. So again, not all schools will require it. Some students might say to themselves, wow, I've had a killer quarter one. I want to make sure that early action school has seen my grades from quarter one, because I actually think it will help strengthen my application. Some students are like, oh, it was really rocky this quarter. I hope they don't ask for them. They may ask for them in any case, and at which point we'll provide it. But there is an option to send a quarter one transcript. The next transcript that is automatic, that students do not have a responsibility to request, is what they call the mid-year transcript, and that's quarter one and quarter two. So any semester one averages, all quarter one and quarter two for full year classes. Never exam grades are reflected, but those are automatically sent like early February. Yes?
Say a student's going to apply for five schools, but two of them are going to be early on, and the other three are just regular. Can they all still be within the same area?
Yes. So the question is, if you have 5 schools, for example, and 2 are early action, the other ones are regular decision, do they all kind of live in the same place? And the answer is yes. And you'll see, it just lists out the school, and it looks like a little bit of an Excel spreadsheet, and you will see the application type will list out early action, and then regular decision for the rest.
Can I just answer to that?
Yeah.
The early action schools, the transcripts will be sent to the early action schools, but not to the regular decision at that time. So you will notice that. And to go back to I just wanted to add on to your question, especially, so talking about the transcript manager, and I think we get this, each one of us, every single year, a phone call or an email. When are you sending my transcripts? I requested, at the beginning of September, our first day of school, I submitted we don't get notifications when you or your student actually request the transcripts. We just go into an actual transcript manager to see who's requested, and we promise that everything will get there and it will get there on time. We can assure you of that, but we also base on when things get sent out on whether or not that student has had a meeting with us. And if their essay is complete, and if they showed us their essay, we have requirements ourselves. We have you guys do parent response forms. We have to make sure they have a resume completed. If they don't, we don't have much to work off of to write a letter of recommendation. So there's a lot of things that go into whether we can complete the package and in what timely fashion we can do that. It will get done, but there are a lot of things of who we can get done in a timely manner and in what order. So, if you're confused about that, surely give us a phone call or an email. And surely if there's, I had just a conversation tonight about a student potentially having an early read due to sports. Something like that comes up, please give us a phone call or an email, and we can prioritize based on things like that.
You had a question, sorry, yeah. Yeah. Is your question kind of like about how to focus? Us personally? Yeah, I guess no later than whatever it says on that, October 6th. Is that what we said? Yeah. I mean, so the question is about when is the latest possible time we can determine whether or not we're applying early action? Is that kind of what you're saying? I mean, I would say October 6th to give us that 3-week lead time, whatever it is. However, I'd be lying to you if I said that we didn't always get like a frantic student email that says, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Or not even, I'm so sorry. I decided to apply early action. Is there any way we can get it out the
Just
door
as long
tomorrow?
as it's not October 31st.
Right, yes, which I think is a Friday, isn't it?
I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a Thursday. So we really try to work with the students. The idea is to help them like really focus and think about what the plan is. Sure, if you have a last minute change of heart, are we going to penalize the student? No, but again, I will say the deadlines are for the students. So let's say, for example, this happens, a student decides for themselves that on 10/31 they really want to apply early action to UNH and sent the counselor an email. It was a Friday night. Counselor didn't get back to them until November 4th. That's what, I don't know, whatever. The school does not penalize the student for a late teacher recommendation or a late transcript. All of those things can be explained away. The deadlines really are deadlines for the student. But I would say put that in your head as in like, first week in October, we need to nail down this list to early action schools if we're really thinking about early action. And our kind of feeling on early action is like, if you don't know by October 6th that you want to apply by 11/1, that's fine. You might not be ready. It's completely appropriate to apply by a regular decision. A student asked me today, what are the advantages of applying early? And my answer is like, the advantage certainly of applying early is you get to hear back early. So if you have the acceptance, that's like a major relief on a student's shoulders in December. I always say this, it is a long haul from the end of junior year through March of senior year. It is a long time to still be talking about this. So that's certainly the advantage. The disadvantages for early action is like you have to be ready. All your stuff has to be done, and it's a scramble. As you know, at the beginning of the year, it's busy. Everyone's busy. So they're stressed. They've got a lot on their plate. It's a lot to do. There are a lot of moving parts, but it can be done if that's something that they want to do. Thank you. The 31st is?
Sure.
Okay. Sure. Sure it is. Am I still talking?
Yeah, this is you, but I feel like we talked everything except talk about fair test maybe.
What? Oh, yeah. So I mentioned this a little bit earlier. There was something else I wanted to say when we were just talking about it. I can't remember what it was. There are schools that are test optional. I think students are frantic a little bit about the SAT scores. And I think a really good way to think about this is if you have a test score that's in the mid 50% of what the school is accepting in terms of their averages for last year's class, it's probably a good idea to send your scores, even if it's test optional. So there are a number of schools. This is the website. You guys will publish this for you, so you can have this web presentation if you want it. If you go on Fair Test, there's a list of colleges that don't require a standardized test, so you don't have to submit SATs or ACTs. The result of that, though, however, is that like everything else, though, gets weighted a little bit heavier. So they're going to be looking a little bit more closely at your transcript, a little bit more closely at your extracurriculars, a little bit more closely at your essay, which really has to be awesome. So those are the kinds of things to consider. Students might think their SAT scores aren't great or they're not as good as they want them to be, but actually if they are in that mid 50% or even better, that actually could help strengthen their application. That's like an individual conversation that you're more than welcome to have. And also, they don't need to torture themselves by taking it multiple times. Twice is perfectly reasonable. I think if you take it once, you might, depending on your schools and programs and your REACH schools, you might want to take it a second time, but we don't necessarily recommend taking it more than that. Yeah, I feel like we discussed all those other things. Any other questions about standardized test scores? I know it's a long presentation. Are you guys hanging in okay? We could sing or dance for a minute. Yes. It's on Common App, but yes. So Common App, so the question is about can you enter multiple sittings for SATs, and it says how many sittings do you want to report for tests already taken, and I think there's like up to 5 or something. And then it asks you if you're planning on taking future tests, and that's another one where you say yes or no, and if you are, and then it offers you the date. So they kind of know to expect something coming, and that would be important if you were taking the October test. Yeah. Sure. All early applications for the last couple years, I think we've seen an increase over the past, certainly 5 years. The past couple years have been between 40 and 50% of the class. Early decision is still very slim, I would say, I don't know, less than 5%. So early decision is the early application deadline. I'm sorry, I didn't really kind of cover that again. Thanks for bringing that up. Early decision is when you apply to a school, you sign a contract, the counselor signs a contract, and the parent signs a contract that says, if I get in, I'm coming regardless of the financial aid award package or anything else. And this is great for admissions, and it's great for their revenue because they get to predict 40% of what's coming into their class. Some schools will take up to 60% of their class ED because they know what's coming and they can predict that. On our side of the table, there is some wiggle room there around the financial aid, I will say. They don't want us to say that, but if it comes back wildly different, their financial aid award package, than what their net price calculator had suggested to you, all schools are federally required to have a net price calculator on their website, so you should look at that, because that will give you a decent estimate based on your income. If it's really different, you have some negotiation with the financial aid office, and we always say, you can always ask for more money. They can always say no, but it does not hurt to ask. And don't call it a negotiation, they don't like that. But you can always ask for them to reconsider your financial aid award package. So anyway, the early decision piece is great for a student. You might be able to predict a better chance at admission, but also, again, you kind of have to be sure that this is your school. Okay, I'll stop talking now. It's your turn.
All right, so we're going to move on to more of what we've referred to at the junior seminars of the qualitative pieces, and one of the biggest ones is the college essay. So your students during summertime should have had to write a piece for English, the essay over the summer as a written assignment, and that was the beginning of what should have been their rough draft of their college essay. That was the intent, and initially, anyways. Raise your hand if you saw it, read it.
Any good ones?
Anyone feel like it was decent? Yeah? Okay, good. Any of you pick the topic? Good, that's good. You're well on your way to a good start then. So as we have talked to the students about this, it is one of the most critical pieces because along the way they have been really a number. They've been a GPA, they've been a standardized testing number, they've been a rank, and the essay really gets them to a point where they become alive and they are a voice and they get to narrate who they are as a person. And it's their story to tell. So we really tell them to take this seriously. It shouldn't be a one write-up wonder and turn it in. It should be a process, and it should take time and a lot of effort, and it should be done by them. You know, as parents, I know you kind of probably want to jump in, but we're here to kind of give you some tips on what you can do. We've talked to them already about what they can do. So for you guys, we just want to, you know, maybe give you a few tips of how you can kind of work with them. So one is just basically let them drive the process with the essay. It has to be their essay. Obviously offer words of encouragement, take a step back, don't overly criticize, read it, be insightful with them, question, you know, offer like suggestions, and it's always good to ask questions to make them ponder different ways of thinking. Be realistic. Mainly, though, it has to we have to make sure it's about the student. And a lot of times, the students think that they have to, and this comes from a college too, Rice University writes, students think it has to be a discussion of their most traumatic experiences. If you have a relatively peaceful existence, it is fine. So it's always, it's funny, because sometimes even working with students, they think, you know, well, they have to think deep of like something bad that's happened to them, and that's what's going to make the essay, you know, the most powerful. And sometimes they've had really nice childhoods, and that's okay too. And it's, whether it is something that may be tragic that's happened to them, or a death, or, a game situation. We have a lot of sports references here. We have a lot of trips. A lot of students go on, the World Challenge trips or things like that, or the Why Do I Israel trips. And as powerful as those trips are, and they thoroughly enjoy them, we have to remind them always it's what they have learned, what they've gained, what they've realized as a result of the experience. It's not for them to describe the experience or describe that, bottom of the ninth inning, batter up, tied game situation. It's what they have learned from the experience. We always want to keep the child focused on the essay's purpose. That's what we encourage you as parents to keep doing, and keep that in mind. Another university had said, Johns Hopkins University, I laugh at this one because we do it. I never run into a colleague's office and say, look at this 4.0 GPA. I will run into an office with a good essay to share. That excites me. And we do that constantly. When we come across a good essay, we can't help but share it, and we talk about it, and we share it with each other. And now I've started a file of essays that I keep, and I ask them, can I share it with students so that they have an understanding of what really makes a good essay a good essay? And it isn't hearing about the typical ninth inning baseball story, and it certainly isn't, oh, I didn't get captain senior year, and it was the worst feeling ever, and things like that. Sometimes it's like the littlest things that you heard the student's voice. That's what they want to hear. They're here to hear about the student and who they are, just a 17-year-old voice or an 18-year-old voice. So along with the essay, they may or may not have to write supplements. Supplemental essays can go along with each school that they may or may not have on their Common App. So that might be very limited questions. It might be an additional essay. It might ask them to upload a resume. It might be 2 essays. You never know what a school is going to be asking them. But supplemental essays could be just as important or more important than that one big essay. And that's because it's going to be very specific to that college. And we've seen supplemental questions range from, why Brown, which they're going, for them to ask just a simple statement as that, they want to hear what you know about Brown. So you need to be very detailed and very specific with that supplemental question. To give you an example, I brought in one from Johns Hopkins, and I won't read all of it, but just to give you, it sounds so silly, but you can tell that it's coming from a teenager, but it's so well written, and they've done so much background work about Johns Hopkins that it is just, you can't help but like to read it, and you can just tell this is where they're meant to be. So the question is, why Johns Hopkins in their supplement? And he titles it the Palette of My Mind. It says, the first paragraph is a question that every high school senior is familiar with. What kind of college is the right fit for you? My criterion doesn't appear in the deluge of admissions pamphlets. That's because I want my school to resemble my favorite dish, the hummus tabbouleh wrap. And Johns Hopkins University is the creamiest, tangiest, most flavorful hummus tabbouleh wrap in existence. And he goes on to explain how the specific things in Johns Hopkins that he loves and compares it to a tabbouleh wrap. For existence, how the LGBT community is like the homemade pita that is warm and soft yet tenacious. and how specific he gets about the hummus, and how he relates that Mediterranean diet comes with its pressures, but hummus handles well, and always stepping up to the plate, ready for any intimidating food critic. And he relates that to all of the different courses, and he names specific professors to go along with it. He relates that to the hummus. He follows it up with the influx of diced tomatoes, onions, and parsley, all varied in taste, combining to form the tabbouleh sauce. And he relates that to the different cultures that are mixed into Johns Hopkins. And that, to me, just explains what a great, well-written essay that you can take from what you love and put it together to answer a question such as, why Johns Hopkins? But he did his research. He knew exactly what he was talking about when it came to Johns Hopkins. So that's just a little insight into what a well-written supplemental essay is. They say it can, be 1 to 250 words, and some kids, when they say, because I really like the area and it has the program I want, and they turn that into us. And then when you read something like this, that's the difference between why some kids are going to this school and why some kids aren't going to certain schools. So you can find this stuff online. It's not anything somebody here wrote. This is an essay that you can find online at Johns Hopkins. Institutional applications, so the summer assignment that was done, those were prompts from the Common App. If a student is applying to an institutional application and they have their own essay prompt, unfortunately that means there's more essays to be written. So you have your Common App prompt, and then if you have institutional applications that you have to do additionally, you're probably going to have to write more essays, or your student's going to have to write more essays. So there's a lot of writing that goes on. That's why we say don't wait till the last minute. You have to get started ASAP. Mm-hmm. So it depends on what their prompt is. So I always ask that question. Yeah, so I always say to them, read the prompt, and if you can tweak it a little bit, great, then there you go. But you'd never know what that prompt is going to be. All right, you want to move on? Oh, look at those 3 beautiful women up there. All right, so we've told the students again and again all last year. I mean, we've really been saying this since freshman year. We say it to our freshmen even this year, to connect with teachers and your counselor, because you're going to have to need letters of recommendation come senior year, and now we're finally here. So for the students, we've asked them to connect with a teacher last year, at the end of last year, to connect with at least 2 teachers and ask them to have a face-to-face conversation and politely say, would you like to write a letter of recommendation on my behalf? It seems as though a lot of them already did that, either at the very end of last year or right at the beginning of school this year. So what that entails is that first conversation, and then what we've been doing with them in boot camp is the official request, and that official request goes through Naviance. So a lot of what happens is the students are doing their work either in Common App or the institutional applications, and the teachers in us, we do all of our work in Naviance. So this one little piece is the requesting of the transcripts and the requesting of the teachers goes through Naviance, and that's what we've been working with them on as well. So they've been requesting teachers through Naviance, and the teachers get the request and they will submit when they're ready. So in order to do a letter of recommendation from the teacher's perspective, the teachers might have either their own questionnaire, or they might have them submit a resume to the teacher. There's also a teacher questionnaire in Naviance that they can fill out for the teachers. And this it goes a long way for the teachers for them to write an effective letter of recommendation. We also have in Naviance, we have them do a counselor questionnaire. So this was part of their summer to-do list. And I was happy to see a few students actually complete this over the summer. Not everyone did, but some kids did. So we've asked them to complete a counselor questionnaire and a resume. Those are housed in Naviance. Colleges do not see this information. It's housed in Naviance for the counselors to see. These two pieces of information truly help us write an effective letter of recommendation. The third piece, which is not listed up here, we forgot to put this in, is for the parents, for you guys to fill out the parent response form. How many of you guys have done that already? Bravo. Great work. Really appreciate that. So if not, if you guys log into Naviance under your own account, you should see under the plan section a parent response form. And the children will not see your answers. It will only be for us to see. That also helps us write a really good letter of recommendation to get your perspective on your child. So those are our three main things. We also use their essay as a nice point of reference in writing letters of recommendation. So that's why having that individual meeting is important, because we go over the counselor questionnaire, resume, and we have the parent response form, but we also ask them for their essay. And so that's why when I talked about the transcript request manager, and sometimes when we have these meetings with kids, they don't have all this information, and sometimes some of the kids have it already, and so we can hit send and submit, and it's really easy. So it's a process. So the letters of recommendation, we really take our time in writing effective letters, and we really get to be as personal as we can. We make them individual as we can. We go back to, back to freshman year and try to recall as much as we can from freshman seminar, sophomore seminar, junior seminar, and we try to make them as, as positive and as effective as we can. We, just like you guys, we want to see them go and exceed the goals that they have set for themselves. So we really take this seriously, and that's why we ask for the 3-week window so that we can take our time and write these letters. So when they request the teacher in Naviance, the teacher then gets a notification that they've been requested, and at that point, the student should have already done the teacher questionnaire, or the teacher will give the student their own questionnaire. Yes. It will. Yep. Any other questions about this? So we submit an evaluation form, the letter of recommendation, school profile, and transcript, the most important piece. So we submit that through Naviance on each student's behalf. Is that it? Okay. You want this?
Our expertise really only goes so far. So we actually tend not to get too much into individual family finances for obvious reasons, but I'm just going to give you some general information and things that we've learned over the years. One is, what is financial aid? We do have some handouts also, so if you didn't get handouts, grab the handouts. We included some information from MIFA, which is our Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority. They have a wealth of information on their website. We included a good timeline. They offer seminars and events at local areas. So I think there's a link that I sent to you guys in in the information about tonight. So there's a link in there that you should look at. There are also something called Fafsa Days. It's another nonprofit in Massachusetts that hosts events that you can sign up for. And if you're like totally lost, like I would be going through this process, it's like kind of it's like going to a tax person. If you're not doing your tax forms on your own, this might be really helpful for you to sit with somebody one-on-one and kind of go over things with them. So, you feel like you're not making any mistakes on those important forms. But financial aid is any aid that's not any money that somebody else is giving you to pay for college that is not your own. So financial aid can come in the form of scholarships or grants. So either of those two terms are the best terms because it's free money that you don't have to pay back. Scholarships can come from the institution themselves. Scholarships can come from Swampscott High School at graduation. Grants can come from the schools themselves or the federal government, for example. There are two different types of aid. One is called merit aid, and the other is called need-based aid. Anyone tell me what merit-based aid is? I'm sorry? Based on your grade. So that's part of it. So merit-based aid is just that. I always like to say it really does pay to do well in school. Merit-based aid is based on your GPA and oftentimes your test scores. So colleges, the financial aid office, will look at your transcript, your GPA, and your SAT or ACT scores, and sometimes your AP scores, and say, wow, this student has really excelled. In fact, for our school, this student has excelled so much that they've really exceeded way beyond our mid 50%, and that helps us as an institution increase our educational profile of students, and therefore we as an institution are able to offer you X many thousands of dollars off of that sticker price of the school. So oftentimes you're going to see that much more at a private college, where you won't see that more at a public university. You see that at the private schools. You'll see at the private universities knock $20,000 right off the top. So when you see those sticker prices, you don't necessarily want to pay too much attention to them in the idea of like closing a door on an application because you see that sticker price at $63,000 a year. It really depends on the student, it really depends on the school, it really depends on the student's GPA, their transcript, and their SAT scores. Again, that's another reason to consider a non-test, a test optional school in sending your SAT scores, because you might actually want to be considered for merit-based aid. Who doesn't? Some schools will even tell you, we'll consider you for this aid if you're able to get X score on the SAT, and it might behoove you and your family to discuss that as an option with your student. Maybe you should try this, Johnny, one more time in November and see if you prep that we could, this could make a $6,000 a year difference. So merit-based aid is really where you're gonna feel you're earning some money back from the college, by and large, is the merit-based aid. It's really gonna feel like you're getting some bang for your buck. Did you have a question? Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's a great question. I would say that I can't answer that personally. I think it probably depends on the institution. I think they probably all have a different party line. So the question is, if you apply to a school ED, are you undermining your ability to earn aid? Probably not as much the merit aid, but more of the need-based aid, sure. So that's one chunk of financial aid is merit aid. That's going to be the best aid for you. That's really going to be where you're noticing some money coming off the top. The need-based aid is aid based on your FAFSA or your income and your CSS profile. So how much money the college, they call it cost of attendance, so that's the sticker price, minus what they call your EFC, is your estimated family contribution, is what you're going to be left over with is your need-based aid, how much need you have left. So that's how they're kind of looking at your whole package and how they're coming up with that number. So of course, it's like a joke actually, like you look at the net price calculators and it comes back with the EFC and you think something happened to your computer, that something's wrong. But that really is based on your income, that is what they think that you can provide. So that need-based aid is that other number that you're left with, is how much money that they think you can pay to the college. And so that need-based aid is never as much as you'd like it to be, I think. So that's why we kind of say the merit aid is really where, as a family, if you're shopping for a college we talk a lot about the academics, we talk a lot about the social fit, but really, it's almost like flipped backwards. What many families could and should be doing is, let's figure out our budget and what we can be shopping for, and then go shopping for the college. So at the end of the day, this really has to be a conversation with you and your student up front. We've seen students kind of devastated at the end of the day when they get into their dream school, and ultimately the family decides that they can't pay for it. So that's, I think, a good conversation to have up front. If you can manage that. So there is merit-based aid and need-based aid. We will say, some families we've heard, we're not even gonna bother applying, we know we won't get any financial aid. And we've heard more often than not that that's like an irresponsible reaction to financial aid. Everyone's actually eligible for some level of aid. So federally, and that actually can be a good way for your students to build credit, even if you intend to pay it back for them, but it's in their name, and you could pay it back for them and have them earn some sort of equity over time as a student. So that's sort of another strategy. But some schools won't even consider you for merit-based aid if you haven't submitted a FAFSA, which I don't know, but we've heard that too before. So we say the FAFSA really is not that strenuous to fill out, so we recommend you fill out the FAFSA no matter what. And if the aid, if you decide not to use the aid, fine, but at least then you have it. Sometimes circumstances change, and I don't think it's any different this year, but we've heard that if you don't submit the FAFSA on year one, then you're no longer eligible in subsequent years for need-based aid after the fact. So again, just one of those things that you might as well just check it off your list. The FAFSA opens on October 1st. You might as well fill it out, and then you're done. You fill it out every year in any case. So if you decide later on you don't want to fill it out, that's fine. But our recommendation is fill out the little FAFSA. So that's that. Yeah. Oh, question. Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. So are you either getting merit or need-based aid? Is it one or the other? So when you get they call it, I love this, a financial aid award. Woohoo. It's the how much money you are being offered in financial aid. And that is not necessarily how much money they're giving you from the institution. So they'll list it out. They'll say, BU's trustee scholarship, $8,000, it's actually more than that, but let's pretend it is, $8,000, a Pell Grant, $7,500, those are two things you don't need to pay back, and the remaining, we're suggesting, they might say Parent Plus loan, X amount of dollars, and the remaining, we think that you can pay X. So you would then, so it could be that it's part scholarships and grants, and then a loan, and then the remaining you might have to finance on your own. So we'll list it out, so that will all be listed on your financial aid award letter. Another opportunity actually for financial aid is what they call work study. That's a federal program that is something that you'd have to have the FAFSA completed in order to be eligible for. Those are dollars like, so they call it work study because you can work as a student and you can also kind of study. So for example, a lot of students will have worked in the rec center or at the library where it's like not a very strenuous job. They're sitting kind of checking people in, they're filing some books, or they're scanning ID cards, but then they're also doing homework. And so those dollars are like incremental dollars for pizza and laundry. It generally tends to be like 10 hours a week. I wouldn't consider that as a family as something you're kind of putting back towards tuition, but that's actually also something that would be listed in the financial aid award letter. Sorry. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What is that? Sure. So the question is about need blind. So the financial aid office, if it's need blind, they are blind to the needs of the admissions applications from the admissions office. That is, the admissions office and financial aid office are not discussing the applications vis-a-vis how to make an admissions decision based on financial aid. There are many schools that are need aware, in which case they are having some level of conversation. And I'm willing to bet that there is like some massive continuum of what those conversations are like and how intimate those details are getting. And I'm sure it's different for every school. Yes. That's such a great question. I'm glad you brought this up. So the question is, when is the FAFSA due, essentially? So it opens on October 1. Many schools will have different deadlines. So this is one thing, if you take away nothing about financial aid, it is do not miss a deadline. don't care if you missed your deadline is, unlike the admissions process, don't give them any reason not to give you money, because there are plenty of people who are going to make the deadlines, and there's just, they will not accept late applications. And that's true for the FAFSA and the CSS. So I've talked a lot about the FAFSA. The FAFSA is something that all public universities will require. Many, not all, but many of the private schools also require what they call the CSS profile. It's another financial aid application. It is much more involved. It is much more intensive and invasive, and it costs money to both register for the CSS and then also send it to individual schools. If that's something else to just kind of put on your radar. Again, and those deadlines could be different than their FAFSA deadlines, but the financial deadlines are very, very important to pay attention to. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Yep, exactly. So what Shelley's saying is that those numbers can be negotiated. Again, don't use that with the financial aid officers. They really don't like that word. But it is possible for you to go back and to have them to have a conversation about how to make those numbers work better in your favor. And what you should do, so our feedback has been, don't go back just asking for more. If you think $5,000 will make the difference, then say the $5,000 will make the difference. If it's $8,000, say that $8,000 is going to make the difference. Johnny's got this offered from a similar school in the same conference. It's very competitive, but he really wants to go here. Can you make that happen? Like, that's the conversation you want to be having. So go in with specific criteria, to crunch the numbers yourself and see, reasonably what you can make work given that the offer they've already extended to you. Yes. Oh, sorry. That's correct. The CSS profile is a different financial aid application than the FAFSA. I think it does, yeah. Yeah, if you Google CSS profile, it'll come right up. But I think I can't remember if it's in that email I sent, but we're actually working on a larger document, but of all the information for seniors, but we can send it out. But if you just Google CSS profile, it'll come up. I'm sorry, I missed your question. What is the FERPA? Oh, great question. We've pretty much taken care of with the students. The FERPA is the release authorization form. It basically says, FERPA stands for Family Educational Rights Protection Act. It says I am allowing the school to send my academic records and information to schools on my behalf. So it allows the counselor to send a transcript. It allows the teacher to send a recommendation information. So that's part of that. The other thing that the students are signing is I either waive my right to see my recommendation or I don't waive my right to see my recommendation. And our conversations with them, of course it is their right to make the decision. However, we're asking them to consider what the message is that it sends if you say, I don't waive my right to see my recommendation information. That is, I might like to see at some point in the future, like what my teacher said about me. And what that says to the college is, I'm worried, oh sorry, go ahead.
The colleges do see if the kids waive their rights or not.
Yep. Thank you. So the college, the message to the college kind of is like, maybe the teachers or the counselor has something that I might be worried that they're going to tell them that may not be as positive as I want it to be. And the reality is, like, our counselor evaluations are always as positive as they possibly can be. We're highlighting all of their strengths and being honest and truthful, as are the teachers. And that is something that they want. They want recommendations to be honest and truthful and very upfront. They also, in some cases, won't even look at a recommender's letter if the student has checked that box, I don't waive my right. So again, it's something to consider. We're not pressuring the students one way or another, but just to really consider the implication of what that message sends to the college admissions committee. Hi. Yeah. You'll have to pay attention. So you're going to be submitting the FAFSA early anyway. But so the question is about, like, if you're applying early, are you also submitting the financial aid stuff early? You are, but you might not hear. So every school, of course, is different. So you might actually not get your financial aid award package at the same time you're getting acceptance information from a school. Every college is different. Yeah. But don't be, so Every applicant is assigned a financial aid counselor, so don't be afraid to call the financial aid office and ask questions. Some people just don't even bother to ask, but you should absolutely ask and advocate for yourself, and if you have those numbers in mind, if you've crunched the numbers, ask for what you think you can pay for. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. So there are Common App fee waivers in there. So any student that is eligible for, say, like free and reduced lunch, for example, they will identify that, the student will, in their common application, and then it actually shows up on our end as the counselor. We kind of verify that that's true. It would be helpful if the student actually just mentioned that to us, because sometimes we've already sent the transcript, and that's actually in the page where it shows up in. And we might not have seen it on the first time around, or they didn't check the box until after we sent the transcript and all of our other information. So we can go back in and refresh our page and then send it. So it's helpful if the student has a conversation with the counselor about the fee waiver. But yes, it does actually live in Naviance, and there are 5 different, I think, qualifying criterion for that. So you can have a peek at that. I just wanted to mention, in terms of scholarships, here, so a question that comes up every year is like, how can we look into scholarships? Well, I would say, like I said earlier, the merit-based aid is really where you're going to find the highest dollar amounts show up for you guys. So that's one thing, is to really pay attention to that. And so you'll be, like I said, you'll be seeing that in that same line of like them looking for students to sort of meet or exceed their averages and helping the school. So for you guys, you'll notice that on the more likely schools, or safety as we might call them, that's where you're going to be seeing more merit aid, is in those likely safety areas. But in addition to that, scholarships, we recommend thinking about the competition pool. So the competition pools are going to be smaller at Swampscott High School graduates than it will be for the Koch scholarship, for example. So students can absolutely apply to any number of scholarships out there on the World Wide Web. However, it is time better spent, perhaps, focusing more globally, locally than globally, and regionally. So we will post everything that comes through our office, and there are a number of them, of scholarships on the Naviance scholarship list, so that's available to students in their Naviance account. So that's one thing, is to always kind of look at that, like, a Farmers Association one comes in, there's an Essex County one, there's the Firefighters of Nahant, so those are all kind of different than the ones that we will talk to the seniors about in March. So we used to call it like a scholarship fair. We have an in-house scholar. We're actually really lucky that our school has this. We have over 70 scholarship organizations that give money to our grads, and there's a whole process for that. That's, however, money that you can't really like count on, because you won't know that. They're not announced until actual graduation, so that's not like really money that you can count on. They tend to be between $500 and I think the highest is what, like $5,000. So again, that's not money you can't really necessarily count on for money that you're going to be able to pay, but that is an opportunity to earn scholarships. There are websites out there, like FastWeb is one. There's an app called Scholly, SCHOLLY, that's kind of a nice organizer if you're looking for other ways to kind of look at financial aid.
You just really need to be careful of like where you're putting your time and
thank you.
FastWeb and Scholly, things like that. Again, you're on the global level of things, and you just need to be careful because, like I said, the application part, with essays and supplements and all that, it takes up so much time, and then put so much time into the scholarship part. You just have to be very careful.
Yeah, exactly. So like I said at the beginning, I apologize. We spend a lot of time talking about the college admissions process and the nitty-gritty of it, especially for the 4-year schools. We have, our last year, we had 80% of our students go on to a 4-year school, directly to a 4-year school. We have an increasing percentage going to a 2-year school, and actually also an increasing percentage, not like huge, but an increasing percentage of students taking a gap year. So I've had a number of conversations already this year with students who, out of the gate, have a plan to go to North Shore. They're going to do 2 years, and then they're going to transfer to one of the, the area schools and finish their diploma up there. And then, so that is certainly a path, and it is a solid path, and it is a very prudent and responsible path, especially for students who have who are worried about their financial health moving forward after they graduate, especially for students who may not have totally decided what they want to do yet, and that's perfectly, again, reasonable and appropriate. They're 17, 18 years old. I'd be shocked if you all told me that you knew exactly what you wanted to do when you were 17, 18, and you're doing it now. I'd be shocked. Is anyone doing that? Perfect. Amazing. Good work. So I think by and large, students, we always say, like, even this process is a process of self-discovery, kind of going through it. Oh, something I didn't mention was college visits, and I wanted to talk about that. Sorry, kind of all over the place. If we could think about, let's say you're sitting here and you're thinking, my child is kind of just getting started. What are, like, the important things that they need to be doing right now? They need to schedule a meeting with their counselor, regardless. And that's totally fine. We are meeting with students. There are students at all levels of progress in this game of developing a plan, whether it's a 4-year school, going to community college, or still thinking about the military service. We have students across the gamut. Meet with your counselor. Let's come up at least, let the counselor figure out with your child where they are and how we can help them. The next best thing to do if they're thinking about a 4-year school is create the Common App account, match it with your counselor, do all those little things that we're not going to bore you with your counselor. Do the counselor questionnaire and do the resume and come to some college visits. So again, we have over 70, almost 80 schools, I think, this year. Schools that come here, they give the presentation, much like the presentation that you would see on a college tour, and they give it right here in our office, and the person that's giving the presentation is more often than not the same person that's reading your kids' applications and helping to make decisions. So your child goes into this admissions visit, they've got a great conversation, they're asking questions, they're asking about programs, and then when Ashley LeBlanc from Suffolk is reading their application, she's like, oh yeah, I met Jack at that thing. He told me he was interested in the business program, he said he might be interested in law. Like, these things really help our students. And it's not just a benefit on the admission side, it's a benefit for them because at this point, again, like I said, they're all so busy, they have very demanding schedules, they're stressed out of their mind, there just isn't enough time in the day to nail down the list, to go look at all the schools that are on that list and do everything else that we ask of them. So the college visits are a huge opportunity for them to get more information, and as I said, as a process of self-discovery, sometimes they think, like, I don't want to go to UMass Amherst, everyone's going there, I'm not going to UNH, or Salem State's too close. And then they go and they have a conversation with an admissions counselor, or they go on a tour locally, and all of a sudden their criteria is developed, and they're a totally different person, they've got a completely different tune. So if your child has no idea what they want to do, that's totally fine. Come meet with your counselor, do those couple things, and we will get them on their way. And that's true whether they're doing the 4-year path, whether they're doing the 2-year path, whether they want to talk about gap year. We've got a ton of resources and contact information. The idea is that, like, we really want to see your kids. Our schedules are packed. I saw Ms. Sturma's schedule next to mine, and it's like one after the other. So we assure you, your kids are paying attention. I think I've been really impressed this year with when we send out an email, we're actually getting responses, which is shocking. So one conversation that would be helpful to have with your kids is, like, read your emails and respond to them. We do get the, like, did you get my email to us? And we'll say, yeah, we responded. And they're like, oh, I didn't check it. So that would be helpful if they would read and respond to emails too. That would be really helpful. Yeah.
Do you send out emails about when the schools are visiting, or is that just posted?
That's a great question. Do we send out emails about when the schools are visiting? So it's posted in Naviance. The students, when they register, there's an opportunity for them to register on Naviance, and then it sends them automatic updates. It also will send them automatic, like, alerts to their email if they have it in their colleges I'm thinking about list. It will only email them from Naviance if they've registered for it, or if it's in their colleges I'm thinking about list, or if they're paying attention to the morning announcements, because we're also doing it there. And it's also posted in the guidance office. There's no reason for them not to know about it. But and it's something that we've been talking about. And the email that we sent them early on this week said 2 things you need to be doing are paying attention to your email and coming to our college visits.
That's the kids. What about the parents?
Well, so you can see it on Naviance, but also we try to, when we write an email and it says to students, CC parents, the idea is that it's intended for the students, not for the parents, but for the parents to see the same information that the students are getting, just in case the students didn't see it and the parents did, so you could have a conversation at home. So we're trying to, like, CC you on all the communication too. I know we talked a lot about a lot of things. What are some topics that you guys want to talk about? Are you done with us? Mm-hmm. So the question is, so you're talking about like Harvard, Georgetown, Stanford might come to the Newton Marriott, for example. Is that worth going to, or is that published? So students will often get emails like that, especially if they took the PSAT. We publish the NIACAC Fair. You can also look at, again, it's in the email that we provided. We told the students about it. But that's more research that you'll probably have to do. The very competitive schools and schools like those that I just mentioned they don't need students to apply. So they're not coming to us anymore. So sometimes they'll go to the big college fairs they'll do these like hotel regional events, and you can find that information on their website. So if you don't see it listed in Naviance under our college visits, I would recommend going to their individual admissions websites and seeing if there are any in the area that maybe fit your schedule. I wanted to say something, I can't remember. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a great question. So the question is about the coalition application, which we didn't spend a lot of time talking about. So, we didn't talk about the coalition application. So it is very much like Common App, except it's not Common Application. So students who, like, say, for example, Maryland is one of those schools that requires the coalition application, the students should go through the process of submitting the application for the student portion of it. We're still going to be sending the transcript information, the counselor evaluation, the teachers will still be able to send everything else through our interface through Naviance and the database on that end.
Everything will still meet up.
Yep, at Maryland. Yep. Thanks for bringing that up. Any other questions? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the question is about supplemental essays versus the Common App essay. So the Common App is actually on a different tab in the Common Application Manager than each individual school. So when you go into each individual, so I should say the Common App essay lives in that area where all schools get that main chunk of the application, the profile information, the education information, the activity section, the writing section, which includes their Common App essay. Each individual school has its own tab, and within that tab are the supplemental essay information. So I would be surprised if it was like, it would have to be like a technological glitch for it to not get to the right place. It could be too that a student writes an essay for YBU and they write about the city and unfortunately forgot to change the city to suburb or rural area, you know? So that could happen too, but I would just double check before. But as you submit, there are several prompts to make sure you're submitting the right thing. Sure. So that wraps up our fun presentation, but we'll stick around for a while. Nice to see you all. Thank you.